So for today's video, we were talking about spells, but we're not going to be talking about them in the context of combat. We're going to be talking about them in the purposes of utility for world building as a GM, and also creative ways you can use them as a player to have weird stuff happen and take more control of the setting. So, I think that it'd be easier for me to explain the core idea by just going to the first example immediately. And for that, we're going to be talking about Magic Mailbox. And what Magic Mailbox does is, as a 4th rank spell, it lets you attach 2 bags and basically ender chests them together. They then share inventory space between them. And any caster that is not primal can get the spell, but it is uncommon, so you need to ask your GM first. That is really the only limit to it. It has a long casting time, and it requires you to have both containers within your touch reach for the entire hour duration. So if I had the spell, I could spend an hour, cast on these 2 bags, and then have the 2 bags be separated over any amount of distance, and still be able to mail stuff back and forth just by holding the bag closed. And you can send up to 3 bulk at a time, where you transport over, and you just need to leave the containers both closed for 10 consecutive minutes, and then their contents swap. So now you can start imagining a system where people fill a bag with a bunch of mail, put that bag inside one of your magic mailboxes that then gets sent over to the other box. And you can even have, like, the capital set up a central system where you have a bunch of different mailboxes going to a bunch of outskirts that then make very short trips to actually send mail around. You just take it to your local mail station, they put in a magic mailbox, goes close to where it needs to be, not exactly where it needs to be, and you can then have a mail network that can deliver messages within a day. And you get same-day shipping for items of 3 bulk or less. And you might need to do fees for, like, the space, and you can, because this is a spell, turn it into a wand. And the thing about Magic Mailbox is it doesn't have a rule against putting magic mailboxes in magic mailboxes. So, let me demonstrate how we abuse this. So behind me, I have our 2 people that are going to be sending messages with each other. We have Stove, who is a shark, and Charmander, who is a Charmander. So, they both currently have their mailboxes set up. However, Stove needs to get theirs reset today. What they're going to do is they're going to take a new bag, and they're going to send it over to Charmander. Charmander has their own bag. We'll set up a new set of magic mailboxes for these, and then we'll send back the new bag. This one will then be recycled and whatever. So you can then keep permanent uptime as long as you have an extra wand to be able to do this. Because you just need to be able to refresh them before it fully falls off. And you can then keep on sending mailbags around, create central hubs, and from there you can add more nodes to the hub. Like if this little shark wanted to start communicating, you would have somebody go with a horse or something, bring a mailbag over to this shark, and then they're connected into Charmander's central network. And you can then continue to build up that network over time and have all the wands be funded by taxes, mailing fees, etc., etc. And after you have this set up, it's basically free because wands don't break if you're only using them once per day. So you have a very low upkeep cost way to send mail around. And that's pretty powerful as a world building tool. So stuff like that is what we're going to be talking about. This has no combat utility of any kind other than you might be able to argue, oh, but generals can send messages to each other and be in consistent communication, which, yeah, that is relevant. You can send a magic mailbox off with a spy or something. This is the type of stuff we're going to be talking about. I think magic mailbox is the most exciting of the things we are going to cover. And you can imagine a lot of uses for instant mail communication. Communication lets people go back and forth frequently in the same day for a low cost. Because this is a 4th rank spell, so that means you can get a 9th level wand, as in like a wand of item level 9, and have Magic Mailbox as a daily cast. And as long as you have an extra point to go to that central network, you can keep on cycling through the different ones. So, yeah, this is a very neat spell. Would highly recommend asking your GM for this, because you can do some very silly things with communication and being able to send items like that. Magic Mailbags would let you set up an Amazon-like system where you can just send magic items anywhere on demand. So you have a central hub network in a major capital city such as Absalom that has outposts everywhere. They can take in written requests for items and then send those items back, as long as they're under the 3 bulk limit for the mailbag, or can be disassembled and then mailed over or put in a bag of holding, or etc, etc, etc. So that way you can have effectively mail in buy magic items from a catalog and have it be with same-day shipping, which I think is neat. So any city that is large enough to have some potential demand could do special mail-in orders via the mailbag system that then the mailbag company takes fees from for every transaction, and etc, etc. It makes a lot of sense for that to be how the world would develop. And that would make it so that magic items are more accessible. So if you want to do like that type of thing, it'd be great. And for a high level adventure party, somebody raided the mailbag system and took out the central hub network, and then all these supply lines are in disarray because some settlements might rely on that for food or for water in a drought, or etc, etc. You can then have adventures told just by the fact the mailbag spell exists. But let's spend a little bit more time talking about different communication spells, because there is stuff like sending. And sending is the classical example of a communication spell. In Pathfinder 2e, it's a very high spell rank 5. So this puts it out of the hands of all early game characters. Wands of Sending are then 11th level items, which is very high for a once per day. Ping them once, they ping you back, and you have an amount of information you can send of less than a tweet. So that is rough. Just because this price of the spell slot needed to be used is so high. But this is Pathfinder 2nd edition, so there are more ways to get around that. If all you are trying to do is send a location, you can do Guiding Star, which is only 2nd rank. Very, very affordable. You can buy a scroll of Guiding Star for only 12 gold pieces, and then any divine or primal caster will be able to cast it. So this is not accessible to your bards or your wizards, but hey, you know, you can't all be winners. And this lets you guide a creature to the location where you cast the spell, so that way you can nudge it over towards you, tell it how to get home, etc, etc. And I can also see uses for Guiding Star of, every night when you're out there, send a Guiding Star back to us so we know your location, and if you fail to send us back the Guiding Star, we are going to assume that something terrible has happened to you. And you can set up things like that, because it does send back a true-false of, did you cast Guiding Star or not? So if you pre-set up ahead of time what sending the Guiding Star versus not sending the Guiding Star means, this then also becomes a communication spell at only 2nd rank. And this does require some planning, but you can make a true-false communication spell. For example, if we are safe to proceed, do not cast Guiding Star, but you can cast Guiding Star to tell us to retreat. And that could be a way for a low-level party to be involved in, like, communication games. Because this is not the type of thing you'd see in, like, the large-scale warfare in most Pathfinder settings. If you're making a game with a low-level cap where, like, the world has only seen people up to, like, level 9 for many, many years, Guiding Star could then actually have applications in that way, but it is very limited. But if you didn't want to have that limit, Dream Message has a similar restriction of it's only like at night, but you can send up to a minute of speech, roughly 150 words, so already we are looking at several multiples larger than sending, 6 sending spells worth of information from a Dream Message, and they'll get it the next time they sleep. So yeah, that's pretty damn good. It lets you send it to up to 10 creatures you know by name and have met in person. on the hidden. So if you need to send a message to a lot of people, you can get a hidden dream message. And this is a lower spell rank than sending, but it doesn't let them send you a message back, which is the downside. Now, of course, there is a spell that will let you send a very long message over and then send a very long message back several times in a day, but that's Mailbox, and then you require the setup of constant upkeep between the two mailboxes and everything along that entails. So it's more of a logistic nightmare to do the Mailbox thing, but you can get 2 wands with 4th level spells for the same general price range as a wand with a 5th level spell. So if you're thinking about using a wand of sending to have the party communicate, consider how interesting it would be to then have them manage the mailbag system, be able to send letters back and forth. Because that is another way you could do the communication game. And I think that the mailbags are more versatile because that way if the party needs to go get and retrieve an item, they can then send it back in the mailbag and get their payment right there without ever needing to go back and collect, and it could make logistics a little bit different for your campaign and let you have them in effective constant contact, but not instant contact. And that's really what I kind of want to focus on. And in terms of travel spells, there really aren't that many for super, super long overland travel. You really kind of just have teleport, and all of the big long-range teleportation spells are basically all uncommon. But teleport is like the granddaddy of them, and this is generally what you should expect from the teleportation spells. There is some mild inaccuracy, but it can skip over large amounts of distance at once. So if you have very, very high level casters, you can have them just be vomiting out hidden teleports and just get wherever they need to go very, very easily. Because you could do a teleport and then go for another shorter range teleportation spell afterward to get you the rest of the distance there. So it's 2 spell slots to just appear somewhere. And if you're using things like Spacious Pouch, the remaster name for Bags of Holding, you can transport a lot of goods this way if you have a high level caster willing to send out these large teleports, which can again have relevancy for setting up a mailbag system for instance, or sending over large amounts of material that need to be used in a different area for construction. But I think there's a different way to approach construction with these types of magical ideas. And for construction, I would look at stuff like Wall of Stone, because Wall of Stone lets you just be 120 foot away, doesn't really matter, 120 foot long, 20 foot high wall. And it's just a wall. And so you can wrap a wall around an area, put a roof on it, put another floor in the middle. Look, you have a 2-story house. It's not a great 2-story house. It's not very decorative. It's just made of stone and earth. But this is a wall. You can put a roof on it and it becomes a house made of stone. That's good. And this does not have a duration for the wall of stone to fall off. However, if you look at the kineticist equivalent ability, Rock Rampart, it actually does have a line of text in it indicating that the wall does indeed fall after a minute. This "but you can sustain it up to a minute" implies the wall would no longer exist if you fail to sustain it. But that does not mean Kineticist doesn't have other nonsense they do. So Kineticist can generate a tree at any time via Timber Sentinel and creates a tree like Protector Tree. And Protector Tree and Timber Sentinel both say an ordinary tree remains after the duration of the spell if you recast it, etc., etc. An ordinary tree will remain. So a Kineticist can, unlimited amount of times per day, spend 2 actions, grow a tree. So yeah, they can reforest a land pretty quickly. If you just get a few very low level wood Kineticists, pay them a good amount, they can plant a bunch of trees. And so if you need trees in an area, there you go. You can figure that out very, very easily. And they can also create fruit. Now, the creature feels full for 10 minutes, but this is still creating some amount of food to keep people temporarily full. It isn't like the Druid folk spell Cornucopia, which actually does potentially fill somebody up. Because with the cornucopia spell, eating 6 pieces of produce from the cornucopia gives as much nourishment as 1 square meal for a typical human. So, there you go. You can, in theory, use cornucopia to feed a certain amount of people a day, and have this take off some of the strain of needing to get as much food. Because focus spells are just a once per 10 minute, and you just kind of cornucopia through it. But, if that's too slow, you can always go for the create food spell. And this just lets you feed progressively more and more creatures the more you hide in it. But I would imagine that this is a second rank spell. Feed 6 medium creatures for a day. Second rank spell, you can buy a bunch of second rank wands for pretty cheap. And create food to get army rations. It's bland and unappealing, but it is nourishing. So you can get some amount of rations as long as your armies have primal, divine, or arcane casters in them, which I think is pretty likely. So create food definitely has implications for a lot of different things. But what if you don't need food and you need water? Well, here's a spell for that. You create a couple gallons. There you go. Kineticists can also use base kinesis to generate some of an element. And the element can be used for any of its normal uses. And air can be breathed by air-breathing creature, etc., etc. So, there you go. Then there are some other spells that are just good for other utility purposes, like Prestidigitation here. Its gimmick is that you can cook things with it, lift some stuff, basically general utility, and you could imagine that if you have like a bakery, you would have Prestidigitation to help dough rise and etc, etc. It's just a nice utility cantrip. I could see some people selling cantrip decks of this to help people flavor their food and things of that nature. So I could see different things coming from uses of this. And again, this isn't going to be like a major, it changes all of the world building the way the Mailbag did, but, you can do general stuff with it to the point where I think it would be a thing that would happen in bakeries, in blacksmiths, in this setting where you use it to just kind of move stuff around when you need to and just generally be helpful. Restyle is basically the best fashion spell because it lets you permanently change what an outfit looks like. The make will be the same, like in terms of if it is fine clothing or not. So I would imagine that a lot of people in the Pathfinder setting would have one set of fine clothes that they occasionally pay to get restyled via the spell, where they just walk into the mage's office, they say, hey, can you give me a restyle? And they'll probably just have to pay the scroll price or whatever, which is 4 gold pieces for a first rank spell, and they can get the outfit completely changed. So there you go. This is probably a thing that people use. And restyle is a way for you to get dyes effectively. So you can change the color of an outfit just by using this spell over here. And as such, it justifies why so many of the Pathfinder characters have such colorful outfits, because, well, you can easily dye anything with a first rank spell. And that's easy enough. Now, on the topic of businesses, I want to talk about healthcare. Because, healing spells exist. Healing focus spells exist. Kineticists can heal. So, if you get a pretty nasty gash, you run down to the church's office, and you get lay on hands a few times, have a nominal fee because it's a 10-minute activity for them, and you're out the door. So, I would imagine that that would be more efficient. And if you get hit by a disease or something, Cleanse Affliction, pay for spellcasting services, Cleanse Affliction comes in, and you will probably want to pay for spellcasting services because, well, the DC does matter, like the person's casting DC, because they do need to roll a counteract, but you can pay to get curses and whatever removed just from any non-arcane caster. And I assume that a lot of settlements will have some kind of clergy, some kind of bard wandering around, some magical source of healing. And so as such, I expect that healthcare would work very differently due to the presence of healing magic. And I believe that in this society, injuries would not be treated as seriously. Because also, if you look at the mechanics of the game, people are still at full fighting, full crafting, full whatever strength, even while injured. So as such, I don't think the society would treat injuries the way we do, where if somebody's bleeding out a lot, everybody's going, oh my god, what are we gonna do? And they need to get down to the hospital, where you could then grab the cleric, have them come over, and they'll be fine. Just immediately. So that's a little bit different. The recovery periods will be much shorter in a Galarian setting because of how the rules engine is lined up. I think that'd be an interesting thing to world build around. Then, for my final category spells, I'm going to bundle this all under information. Because you got stuff like Translate and True Speech, which just break down language barriers. Because you can use magic for diplomatic missions, and then you can kind of build around this upper rank version of Translate to let everybody speak whatever language is most comfortable for everybody. And so this is a thing that probably every diplomatic mission would do, but hey, getting rid of language barriers is not particularly interesting. What I do want to talk about is the stuff that lets you make sure people are not lying. Because you have Oathkeeper's Insignia, which just lets you make a promise, and then if you fulfill it, the spell would let everybody know if you fulfill or break it. So you could use Oathkeeper's Insignia with I will not lie as the oath, and after the duration of the spell, it'll fall off, chime, and if you do lie, it will shatter, break, whatever. So, yeah, there we go. There's also the spell Discern Lies, which I can guess why this did not get printed in Player Core, because it's a 4th rank spell to get a status bonus to seeing if somebody lied, which, not super relevant, but hey, technically a thing. I could see that if you have an important court hearing or something, there might be a scroll of Discern Lies that gets pulled out, or a wand of Discern Lies gets pulled out, the judge casts it, and etc., etc. There's also, of course, Ring of Truth, which is the new name for Zone of Truth, which lets the targets make a will save to try and not need to speak the truth. A ring of a bell sounds as long as you are telling the truth. And so, there you go. Now, Ring of Truth does actually have more limits than the 5e version, because if they succeed the save, if the target is lying and then succeeds their deception check against everybody, gets completely undetected by everybody around them, everybody believes them, the bell will still ring, but you can just make it so that way they'd fail the Ring of Truth and blah 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 blah. So it's not a complete catch-all. There's also a skill feat in Deception that lets you really easily light things like Ring of Truth and alignment detections, things of that nature. So, Ring of Truth will not be the end-all be-all. There are still ways you can use skills to overcome this, but it does give a nasty penalty to deception checks, and it also makes the ringing and like all the other stuff. Yeah. There are spells like Augury, where you can ask question, get certain results. I'm going to zoom out a little bit so you can fully read the spell. But the general idea of this one is the GM makes flat check secretly and gives you an answer to your question. Very low rank spell, so you can ask some pretty meaningful questions decently often. So, Augury is a thing to keep in mind and Augury only looks at short-term results. But you can still see that, like, if you have a general who is going up against a dangerous opponent and knows that a battle will come up soon, they could have 5 people go around and all cast Augury and then compare the results of all of it to be mixed good and bad, purely bad, whatever. Just see what the general result will be. So I could imagine Augury being useful doing stuff like that. Scrying, of course, lets you just see where somebody is, and for a 6th rank spell, you just get to know a bunch of stuff. Duration sustained up to 10 minutes, and you just get to see where they are. It's pretty nasty. Manifest just above the target. Yeah, you just get to see what they're up to. This is a very, very good spell for like villains, or if you have a powerful NPC that's checking in on the party, they could launch a scrying without telling the party. And as long as the party doesn't critically succeed on that save, they won't even know, unless they have other detection stuff set up. So, this is an important thing to note exists, for if you have a villain that's messing with them. Then there's stuff like Pinpoint, very, very, very high rank spell, but you learn the exact location of something. Period. You just learn the location. Yeah, that's silly. But if you are, for example, wanting to find a Lich's Soul Cage, you could try and get a super powerful entity to cast Pinpoint once, and then you know exactly where it is. And you can then do your journey to try and get there. So, this is then a magical way for you to answer those big types of questions. And if you are a high-level party or something, you can actually use Pinpoint for where is the real king to make sure that the person who's giving the speech isn't a fake, and things of that nature. So yeah, this is my list of like the major world building spells. I hope this video sparks some creativity, and I hope you all have a good one. You can expect more videos coming out soon, and that is all I have for you today. Peace.